Good day. I'm Jeremy, joined with Ethan, Hans, and Rendell, guided by Dr. Brian. And today we'll be discussing with you our thesis proposal, exploring visual and auditory interventions to mitigate hands-on cell phone distracted driving. To give a quick overview of what we'll be discussing, so first we'll be discussing on distracted driving, what's its current state, and then next we'll be discussing on warning systems, and that will include some theoretical or research systems and also commercial systems. And then lastly, we'll also be sharing our proposed research assignment.
Distracted driving is when a driver has insufficient or no attention on activities critical for safe driving. This means that anything taking focus away from the road can contribute to dangerous driving behavior. To understand the scope of this issue, let's look at some data. A study in 2015 observed over 3,265 drivers and found that 32.7% were engaged in distracted driving. The most common distractions included interacting with passengers, using a cell phone, looking at external distractions like billboards or pedestrians. In a more recent study, it was found that 8% of all crashes in the US were linked to cell phone use. This highlights how hands-on cell phone usage is a significant risk factor for accidents. Moreover, distractions can be categorized into three main types. Visual distractions, when the driver's gaze is diverted from the road, such as when reading a text message or looking at a GPS. Manual distractions, when hands are taken off the wheel, like texting, eating, or adjusting the radio. And cognitive distractions, when a driver's mind is occupied with something other than driving, like daydreaming. To better address this issue, various detection systems have been developed to identify when a driver is distracted. These systems aim to identify when a driver is not fully focused on the road, and I'll briefly go over some key approaches. Convolutional neural networks, or CNNs, are AI models that analyze real-time camera footage to detect distractions or see what the driver is doing. Gaze tracking tracks eye movements to determine if a driver's focus is on the road or elsewhere. Eye blink detection monitors blink frequency and duration to detect fatigue or lack of concentration. Head pose estimation uses cameras to track the driver's head position and orientation, identifying when they are looking away. Wrist-worn sensors are wearable devices that measure hand movement patterns to detect when a driver is handling a phone instead of the wheel. Electroencephalogram, or EEG, which is brainwave monitoring that detects cognitive distractions by analyzing brain activity changes in real time. These detection systems provide the foundation for warning systems that can help refocus a distracted driver. According to Uvarov et al., these systems can be classified into three main types: visual, auditory, and sensory warnings. Visual warning systems which provide alerts through displays or noticeable lights. For example, heads-up and heads-down displays provide alerts directly in the driver's line of sight, reducing the need to look away from the road. Auditory warning systems use sound-based cues to grab the driver's attention, like tone burst warnings, which use specific sound patterns to grab the driver's attention without being intrusive. Sensory warning systems which involve haptic feedback like vibrations. An example is seatbelt vibrations to provide a physical full-body alert, ensuring that the driver reacts quickly should they miss visual and audio warnings. While some of these systems are actively used in vehicles today, research continues to explore new ways to warn distracted drivers. These are theoretical systems that are still in development due to various limitations like technology, cost, or lack of large-scale testing. Augmented reality warnings use heads-up displays, as mentioned earlier, to overlay real-time alerts onto the windshield. While heads-up displays are already used in some vehicles, like BMW or Tesla, for navigation and speed display, they are not yet widely implemented for distraction warnings due to challenges in real-time hazard detection and minimizing visual overload. Neurofeedback warnings uses EEG sensors to monitor brain activity and detect cognitive distractions. This remains theoretical due to the challenges of real-time brainwave interpretation and integrating EEG sensors into vehicles. Olfactory feedback systems introduces a scent-based alert, for example, peppermint, to alert the driver to regain driver focus. This remains experimental because some response times and effectiveness may vary between individuals. Next is digital voice assistants, where AI-driven assistants provide real-time conversational warnings based on driving behavior. While voice assistants do exist, their use in distraction mitigation is still being researched due to the limited sample sizes and lack of testing across diverse populations. While these concepts are still being tested, current vehicles already implement warning systems that are actively used on the road.
For commercial systems, some of the most common systems available in commercial vehicles are the automatic braking and obstacle detection. So an example would be the Tesla Model 3, where it calls its system the collision avoidance assist. So this assistant has three main features. First, the automatic emergency braking, where the car automatically applies the brakes to reduce an impact of unavoidable collision. Second would be the forward collision warning, where the car provides visual and audible warnings in situations where the car detects that there is a high risk of frontal collision. And lastly would be the obstacle aware acceleration, where the car decelerates if it detects that there's an obstacle in its immediate path. So to dive deeper on visual systems, here's an example by Amini et al., where they use the iDream system. So the iDream's intervention device is a small touchscreen device that provides visual and audio alerts. So their study, they used gaze detection to track the driver's eyes in three different scenarios. First, the no intervention. Second, the pre-planned warnings, where the researchers have already set warning events. And lastly would be the task completion intervention, where drivers have to complete a certain task, such as texting a message. So the results shows that drivers, when they're distracted, it affects their ability to control the car in terms of the speed and staying in their lane. Furthermore, they realize that, as you can see in the results, that drivers, when the visual alerts show, drivers do look at this visual alert, and that informs them to refocus on the road. Another example would be heads-up display or HUDs. So HUDs in theory are a lot more effective in tackling distracted driving because icons are shown right in front of the driver or on the windshield, which is also where the driver should be looking at. So Yu et al. Mentions in their research that HUDs are better than heads-down displays or HDDs in overall driver safety as they provide faster response times and reduce speed variations. However, they also mentioned that HUDs show slower reaction times for throttle and brake compared to HDDs. Additionally, they mentioned that drivers perceive that HDDs demand greater mental effort compared to HDDs. And this is most likely because of the phenomenon of overlay, where it affects visibility of the warning because of the translucent properties, so it's not clear in certain conditions. So let's now discuss multimodal systems. So multimodal systems is where you combine different types of systems, such as visual and audio, to create one big system. So a study that explored this would be Shariat Madari's et al.'s research of two-level versus three-level warning systems. So the unit that they use is TTC, or time to collision, which is just what is the amount of time before a collision happens. So what are levels? So as you can see on the right-hand side, two levels in this scenario would be at level 1, only the visual warning would show at TTC 20. And once it becomes TTC 5, visual, haptics, and audio warnings will all pop up. So in the three-level scenario, at the first level, at TTC 20, only the visual warning will show. At TTC 12, the visual and haptics warning will show. And then lastly, at TTC 5, it'll be all three warnings that will show. So in their research, they found out that two-level warning systems resulted in longer response times compared to three-level warning systems. And this improvement is most likely due to the gradual nature of warnings, which avoid cognitive overload for drivers and allows the drivers to respond in a more effective manner. So now that we've discussed on the current state of warning systems, there are actually still some limitations that do exist. So first would be commercial vehicles aren't really focused on the state of the driver. Rather, they're more focused on avoiding accidents. So an example would be the Tesla a while ago, where a lot of its safety features was really focused on avoiding the accident or even limiting the effects of the accident, rather than looking at the state of the driver, whether they're focused on driving or not. Second would be the testing environment, where many studies conducted are usually done in simulators or even in pre-planned scenarios. So examples would be Amini et al. And Shariat Madari et al., where they used driving simulators and even had pre-planned scenarios. And because of these don't really reflect on real-life driving. Lastly would be the design. So there isn't really a consistent guideline or standard in terms of system designs. So example, Arimitsu et al., they designed the seatbelt vibration to address drowsy drivers. And they use a subjective evaluation to determine the stimulus level of the vibration of the seatbelt. And these are just some of the limitations that exist in the current state.
So, to sum up our problem, it would be that current commercial warning systems prioritize accident prevention rather than monitoring driver state, indicating that we need further research into gradual, low overhead distracted driver warning systems that remain within peripheral vision and gradually adjust to varying distraction levels. So here are the research questions that we plan to tackle in our paper. First, what has previous research done related to our warning system? We also plan to look for other warning systems that people have developed and measure their advantages and disadvantages. Second, how might we design an intuitive and effective visual warning system? And lastly, how effective is our warning system in a multimodal setting?
Our system consists of two main components, gaze detection and a multimodal alert system. First, we use gaze detection to monitor the driver's attention. This technology identifies when a driver is looking away from the road for an extended period of time. Then, we implement a multimodal system based on Shariat-Madari et al. Study, which has been proven to be one of the more effective methods for alerting distracted drivers. By using multiple sensory cues, we ensure that the driver responds quickly to regain focus on the road. The modes of intervention that we will be using are visual interventions and audio interventions. For visual interventions, the steering wheel will blink red, as according to a study by Elliott and Meyer, it is associated with danger. This will alert the driver that he or she is distracted. Following the study of Ngo et al., it was mentioned that HUDs were more effective than HDDs. However, it also caused visibility issues. By implementing the visual cue on the steering wheel, this could alert the driver whilst also preventing visibility issues. We will then combine our system with an audio system to compare how effective the multimodal system is compared to our system alone. We will also apply the findings of Shariat-Madari et al. Regarding gradual warning rather than warning the driver all at once.
We hope that this provides a clear motivation on our topic. So thank you for your time.